Hi everyone, Jarrell here. Today I'm going to share some advice with you regarding game development. So I've had many people contact me in the past, whether it is through comments or DMs, and I'm happy to reply to DMs if I happen to see the DMs. I don't really use social media that much, but if it's on Discord, sometimes I see it on Instagram, which I don't use, but I do get DMs on there. People ask me for advice about game development. One topic people have asked about is sort of managing your project when it feels like you have too much to do, when it feels like there's a lot to do. How do you manage all of those tasks and all those different things? So there's a topic that I want to discuss at length in another video that is called chunking. And chunking is taking similar tasks and grouping them together. So say for example you need to create sprite work, so you need to create sprites for your playable characters, your enemies, your weapons, your environments. So chunking means taking all of those things, putting them all together and doing them basically all in one go. That is a form of chunking, but you can also subcategorize each of those. So for chunking, I would say your playable character graphics, your logical course of action would be to work on one character at a time, and you have chunked those together. So let's say your playable character's name is Frank, so you'll do all of Frank's graphics. You would not work on a couple of frames of animation for Frank and then move on to an enemy and then do a couple frames of animation for an enemy and then move on to do the environment. You would chunk similar tasks. So within that category, you could chunk all of your work for Frank, do all of his graphics together. You can chunk things like your creation of sound effects, your composing of music, writing the story. If you need to create your items in terms of the database information coming up with the items, your magic spells, you can chunk those together. And by doing so, it allows you to focus on one thing at a time and to look at a deliverable that is achievable. And a deliverable is part of a project where you can say, look, I've completed this, here it is. If you're working alone, it's especially important, but if you're working in a group and you need to be able to present to the project manager the work, then deliverables is something to consider. If you're working on your own, you can work at your own pace, but it is important to just don't look at the whole project. It's easy to get overwhelmed with the whole project. What I want to discuss more specifically today is momentary specialization. Momentary specialization is a term that describes your proficiency in performing a particular task, achieving something in that particular moment where you've basically said, I'm not doing anything else, I'm only going to specialize in this one task. So let's say I'm working on mending fences, right? You would have the tools on hand and you sort of get into the workflow. You've got all the tools you need, all the accessories, hammer, nails, screws, you got a line for measuring and all that stuff. You are in the mindset to be able to do this proficiently, to be able to do it quickly. You would not do yourself any favor by repairing 3 boards and then saying, I'm gonna go clear some land over there, I'm gonna go, prepare that and get that ready for crops, remove, the winter grass and whatnot. You would not just jump between multiple tasks, and then you would not say there's some junk over there that I need to clean out, I'll take that junk and bring it to the dump. You would not do that because it prevents you from having momentary specialization. You have to do something called switching gears, and switching gears basically means your mind has to reset, your brain loses its momentary specialization, and it has to recalibrate and say we're working on a new task now, and it slows you down. You have to focus on just doing one task, for example, mending fences, and that's all you do all day because you focused on it. You're able to do it proficiently and quickly because that's all you're doing. You're not doing anything else, you can just focus on that. But there is also a secondary topic to consider, and that is burnout. You can get burnout doing the exact same task over and over and over again. And so something to consider is parallel chunking. So you can take somewhat similar tasks, and when you can tell that you're starting to get burned out on doing one thing, you can switch over to another task that is similar. So that way your momentary specialization, you can still make use of your momentary specialization, and you can say, look, I'm still kind of in the mindset for doing this. I can do something kind of similar because I'm getting burned out on doing this one thing over and over and over again. And how that applies to game development is that things with game development, you can often get burned out if you're just creating your player sprites, right? If you're doing that for 12 hours a day, you can get burned out on it. So find a parallel task that you can chunk alongside of it, parallel chunking, and say, for example, well, you're already doing sprite work, maybe you can just do some items. You know, oh, here are a couple swords, hammers, bows, do the sprite work for that. Parallel chunking allows you to still make use of your momentary specialization, but it prevents burnout because you now have another task that you're just giving yourself some variety in terms of something to do for work. So those are the topics I wanted to discuss today when it comes to game development. I hope this has been useful to you. I am not in my office at the moment. I'm out working. There's a train coming. It's gonna be a honkin', it's pretty loud. I'm out just adventuring, doing ranch hand work, meeting people, camping. At the moment, I'm gonna finish up work here. I've got some saloons I'm gonna go to and tune the pianos, so I'm traveling around tuning pianos right now. Anyway, thanks very much. I hope this topic has been useful to you. If you have any other questions regarding game development, please let me know. In a couple of weeks, I'll be back in my studio and I can answer all these topics and cover them in a bit more focused way, but right now I'm just enjoying the outdoors and doing some outside work. Okay, thanks, I'll see you around, stay hydrated.